Masked Hero.
Hello everybody and welcome to another, Marvel discussion video really. But today we're going to be talking about the scenario packs of Marvel Champions. Something that I feel like does not get talked about a lot. Sometimes within the context of the year that it came out or within a larger discussion they might kind of get talked about. But I feel like I haven't really put any attention onto it. And besides like some gameplay videos of Green Goblin and Kang, and I suppose I did do Enchantress, but like for the most part, these don't get talked about a lot, and so I wanted to put a focus on them just for one video and really kind of get out my thoughts. A lot of these I know are also not going to be something that are in print anymore, and so this is also kind of a way to document the history of the game. But let's cut to the chase here. And let's talk about each of the 6 different scenario packs that have come to Marvel Champions. So first, right off the bat, I believe this was pretty soon after the core set came out. We got the Green Goblin. And my thoughts of this are pretty positive. I think that this comes with 2 scenarios, Risky Business, which is fun but gameable, and Mutagen Formula, which to me is like the platonic idea of what a Marvel Champions scenario should be. Risky Business, like I said, it's gameable. If you want to, you can just like sit in hero form, letting it build up the, I forget what the counters are called, the infamy counters. And you can just sit in hero form, you can build up your board, and Norman Osborn's never going to attack you. And then you just have like 2 people throw out their big attack, flip over the Green Goblin, and then just go to town doing whatever. Definitely this is one where I do feel like it's very gameable in multiplayer. I think in single player it is gameable because like the thresholds are just that much lower. I do feel like you have a little bit more struggle. You don't necessarily have the ability to just sort of cheat the system as much as I feel like when I've played with 3 or 4 players against Norman Osborn, that it's kind of got a little out of hand. It's like, okay, well, we're just sitting here, you're getting all your upgrades, you're doing like a player side scheme, we're doing this, that, we're handling minions, and it kind of becomes very stale and then just becomes a rush at the end. If you don't play like that, this can be a scenario where things are bouncing back and forth a lot, and you're seeing a lot of curveballs being thrown at you. At the same time, I will say that I think it is the weaker of the 2 scenarios, but I think the scenario pack is great. It's either my favorite or my second favorite, to be honest, but I think a lot of that carries on, or I think a lot of that is on the shoulders of Mutagen Formula, which again, like I said, is my platonic idea. It is my deck building. When I'm building a new deck, it's one of the scenarios that I will play against, because I really do feel like Mutagen Formula throws a lot of the challenges that you would have seen in a lot of early Marvel Champion scenarios. Like a lot of those are in there, so you can kind of get an idea of how well your deck handles each of these things. I would say that at some point, maybe around the mutant waves, maybe even Sinister Motives, the game sort of leveled up a little bit, and there were different challenges, there were different mini games that aren't necessarily compatible with what Mutagen Formula is doing, but you get a lot of minion fighting. You get a lot of side schemes. I feel like both of these actually throw a lot of side schemes at you. You get a way where, this is the one where, correct? I'm thinking this correctly. Where, so in Mutagen Formula, if you're taking damage, you're putting an extra threat on the main scheme. So like there is a dynamicness to this where it's not just a math equation. It comes down to what do your boost icons look like. You defended for 2, but you took 3 damage. That adds an extra threat onto the main scheme. How are we going to handle all this? And again, I feel like this gives you a lot of what you need to understand how to handle all these spinning plates. Hello, if you are enjoying this content, if this happens to be the 3rd video of mine you've watched today, I would really love a subscription. It goes a long ways. Additionally, if you have discretionary spending, this is not required, but I do have members opened up. I want to make members only content. The demand's just not there yet, but they do get to see the videos as soon as they are live. That can be 24 hours notice, that can be a week and a half's notice, but you get that content right away. Any form of encouragement, any form of support is definitely appreciated. I won't take up any more of your time. Moving on to the Wrecking Crew. This one is the lowest of the low for me. My first game of Marvel Champions was against Sabretooth. Might have been the wrong place to start. It gave me the wrong idea of how this game works. I'll just say that. But I feel like I played Wrecking Crew after I played all the Mutant Genesis scenarios, after the core set, and I think after the Green Goblin pack. I think that was everything I had under my belt. And then I go to play the Wrecking Crew, and it didn't impress me, and I never felt like I needed to buy my own copy. This is the one thing that you can buy or I could buy it at some point in Marvel Champions, that I would see it and I just wouldn't even bother. This left such a sour taste in my mouth, and that might be unfair. I know it ranks very low. I know it probably might be one of the lowest things. Doesn't have the notoriety of Galaxy's Most Wanted, but I do feel like it does have like a lot of like, this is not a good scenario pack. I think it's fair, but I think maybe it might be a little extreme. But again, this does not rank up highly for me, and I think that unlike other scenarios that we'll talk about or that appear in campaign boxes that also have this issue, I feel like one of the things that holds the Wrecking Crew back is that there's just this restrictive way to play the scenario that does not leave you with many options, or actually it does leave you with 0 options to customize it. Like in the campaign boxes, we see the Thunderbolts, which is customizable, but it's fair to say that you don't have the same level of customizability for modular encounter sets as you would other places. It's always Citizen V and 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Thunderbolts packs. You only have the Thunderbolts encounter sets. But I think that those throw enough different variants at you that you don't really feel it the same way. This is what it is. And we'll talk about, well, we might kind of loosely talk about Spiral coming up. But like Spiral also is, you can only play with encounter sets from the Mojo Mania pack. I believe, if memory serves, Wrecking Crew is just Wrecking Crew. Like, there is no difference. And I feel like that really holds it back. But at the same time, I want to be fair. I think that Wrecking Crew is just an early hiccup, not one that should be extremely criticized, because it was just an early design and it just didn't work out. And I think that that's probably the fairest way to look at it. Moving on from that, let's talk about the Once and Future Kang, which is easily either my favorite or my second favorite of the scenario packs. While it does play much better with more than one player at the table, I think the replayability of this scenario is just off the charts. I love that it focuses on obligations without you placing your own obligation into the encounter deck. I think that's really interesting, is to say, hey, there's going to be these obligations that you need to handle, but it's not going to be the obligations you're used to. And then when you move into the later part of the scenario, you just have your nemesis show up. I think all of that is very interesting. And what I will say from all of that is that I think on a blind play, this is a very punishing scenario. But if you're going to, buy a scenario pack, and the deck is going to be, I think the deck is like 50 to 70 cards. Do I have that somewhere here? Let me check. The base deck is 43 cards. Now, I know that that's because there's a bunch of variants of Kang that are running around. You're not going to see all these cards. But like the base, before you put in any encounter sets, is 43. Like, that's just a huge encounter deck. And I feel like it's a very punishing blind play. But once you understand what you need to get through, what you need to do to get through stage 1 and stage 2, and how important it is to be like, you can let the threat run out, just do not die. Like, once you understand that, it becomes a scenario that, in my mind, it makes it so that your wins and your losses both feel earned. When you lose, you're like, I see why I lost. I did not handle stage 1 correctly. I let this get out of hand. I let that get out of hand. When you win, you're just like, I was playing the best game I could with what was being thrown at me, and I made, as I say in so many other places, like I think it originated with Nick Fury, and it's gone on to be the basic summation of what I feel like makes for a good scenario. Is when you just you're given choices, you're given a multiple choice test over and over again, a branching path, and if you just keep making the right decisions, if you just keep playing as sharp as you can, thinking about your options and playing the best option you can, I feel like you make your way to your end. You say, I earned that victory. It wasn't just handed to me. I didn't just game the system. I didn't cheese anything. I kept making the best decisions I could with what I was given. And yeah, that just makes everything feel earned. It makes your losses and your wins feel earned. Moving on to the Hood, which I feel like is a fantastic thing to buy, maybe not for the scenario. Right off the bat, this scenario is a logistical nightmare to set up, but one that I feel like is really exciting in the moment when you're playing it. Basic summation is you have the Hood, and then I believe you have 7 modular encounters that you just put like off to the side, and then you randomly pick one of them at different intervals during the game. So you might not see all 7 of them. I don't even know if it's possible for you to see all 7 of them, but you will definitely see 3, 4 of them, I believe. What that results in is just a scenario that is a excuse to throw the biggest grab bag of modular encounter sets in to create a wacky scenario that can just go off the rails in any number of ways. I will fully admit this is a hard scenario to set up, because it just is, and it's a pain to clean up as well. It feels like one of the few scenarios where you, like, again, you have the excuse to just throw in things that don't make any flavor sense. Like Armadillo showing up along with Ronan doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but if the Hood just sort of like brings in the Marauders, it's like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of just happened. Like, this is what happened. And I think it's a really clever use of a character that would not easily fit into a campaign box, and I think it elevates what a scenario pack can offer, because this just comes with so many modular encounter sets, and I think it also came with Standard 2 and Expert 2. So this is like one of those ones where you buy the core set, you buy the Hood, and suddenly you've just got so much customizability to the game. And I think it's a great purchase. I don't know that it's not the platonic ideal of a scenario, but I think that it is a great way to just offer elevated gameplay and really highlight modular encounter sets, which I think are one of the most powerful parts of this game. Moving on to the Mojo Mania pack, I will say that I think I love this scenario pack as an unofficially recognized miniature campaign. I think that what we're going to be seeing in Arkham is probably going to be very similar to this. I mean, obviously Arkham has a 3-part core box campaign. I feel like Mojo Mania was kind of the way to try to do a 3-part actual campaign for Marvel Champions, because of course that really there's elements where you can sit there and kind of tie together a campaign, and they're definitely there. Like Claw and Ultron feel like they really link together in a way. They feel like it's kind of a 2-act play. But this really felt like you're in the Mojoverse and you're really kind of making your way through everything. And this does feel like they somehow fit an entire campaign into a scenario pack, and I think that's really cool. My impressions of Magog are probably lower than other people. I think it's a fun idea, but the way that the gameplay works and just kind of like getting the crowd on your side and everything, and the infamy or whatever the counter is, the ratings counters, I believe, it just never spoke to me, and I never want to play Magog specifically. I feel like a lot of people have kind of spoken about this the same way I spoke about Mutagen Formula. Maybe this is the second half of the game's Mutagen Formula, where it's throwing things at you that kind of give you a good spattering. I've never felt that way. I've never felt like this is one that I want to test decks against, but I could see how that's probably possible. Spiral, I think, is a really fun scenario that I don't return to a lot, and I think that does come down to the customizability. It wants you to only play with what is in the Mojo pack, which, to be fair, if you're playing with a 3-encounter set kind of mini campaign, it would make sense that it's like everything comes within this box. Like, you have the core set, and you can pull in stuff from there for maybe other things, but like this really wants you to just play with what the contents of this pack are. And so I think that's playing fair. It's just one that like I don't find myself returning to, because I don't feel like I can make it more flavorfully Spiral. And yeah, I've probably played Spiral 4 or 5 times, and I think that it was fun, but it was just never one that I wanted to return to. On the flip side, I think Mojo is a scenario that is really, really fun to play with new players who don't know how the gimmick works, backwards and forwards, and they don't understand where the pain points are going to be until we're already in the middle of the scuffle. I think this giant pile of threat, and the way that threat moves around, and I believe it's Taskmaster in the Rise of Red Skull also kind of like does this thing where it's like you don't want to be switching back and forth too often because bad things are going to happen. And Mojo carries that on. It goes, hey, there's threat on you, and the threat's going to get moved off at these points, and you look at it and you go, 20 threat per player, how bad's that going to be? And the encounter just sort of takes that understanding and kind of twists it in a fun way. This is one that I have returned to. I've probably played it 12 to 15 times. It's not one that I will necessarily call out a lot, but when someone wants to play, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to play Mojo. Let's do Mojo. Lastly, and we had a big gap here. Lastly, we move on to Trickster Takeover, which is the most recent one. And I think in the context of all the scenario packs, Trickster Takeover might not actually rank up that highly for me, but this also isn't a ranking. This is a summation of everything. I think that it has a lot to do with the amount of times I played the other scenario packs and not actually the quality of these two encounters. Enchantress feels like a very basic encounter that has thematic hurdles that can kind of help you go beyond what like Crossbones or Drang or, like Rhino is always the example because it's the first scenario. It's the most basic scenario. I feel like she is an evolution of kind of the twists on Rhino, like I said, Crossbones and Drang and like Unis the Untouchable. I feel like she's a little bit better than all that stuff. The varying pace of how quickly you can go from the Defiant to the Enthralled with your attachments, I think really helps to add some variability, some replayability to the scenario. And it could be that I just haven't put in the reps. This does feel like one of those ones where it's like, I don't necessarily always feel like I earned my losses. I feel like sometimes the encounter deck is just extra cruel. But I'm not going to hold that against it too much. It's just kind of the way it is. And that also could be a lack of experience. I don't have the experience to really see through the matrix here and understand, here's what I was doing right, here's what I was doing wrong. That said, Loki, I feel like ranks lower than Enchantress. I like Enchantress more. It's definitely left a better taste in my mouth. Loki was, I think, my second least favorite scenario of 2025, but I feel like it was a very close race, and then it was just one that I just did not like. I think if I remember correctly, I kind of said like everything is a 7 to 8 out of 10, with one being like a 9 out of 10, and then like Loki was kind of a 5 out of 10, and then there was one that was just like a 2 out of 10 for me. So like it was the second worst for me, but like by a large margin. And I want to say that Loki ranks low for me just because I think it's built for a multiplayer scenario, a multi-table scenario, so much more. I think that when you're in that setting, when you've got 3 different tables playing Loki, I think it really comes alive. When you have 10 tables playing Loki, you can't tell where we are in the game. It kind of becomes so amorphous that you don't know what you're doing. And I think in a single table mode, it's kind of just another scenario of Marvel Champions. Some of that specialness kind of like doesn't feel the same way. I do feel like it has a little bit of a learning curve. You kind of have to sit there and go, I don't understand how we win, and it takes a while to sort of like figure out how all the pieces interlock to go, oh, we need to do this, or we need to find more of these cards from the encounter deck to add counters to these things, to do this, that. And I do think that gives it a little bit of a replayability, but not one that really has kind of left me wanting more. And again, I'm really not going to turn down, obviously Wrecking Crew is probably the one I would turn down, but there's no scenario in Marvel Champions that if someone says they want to play, I'll say no. It might be one where it's like, okay, I'm just not feeling that one today. But for the most part, I'm pretty up for anything. And Loki is definitely a scenario that like, I think I like it more than the campaign one. But I also think that is because the campaign one needs to have the Infinity Gauntlet, and I do sort of wish that it could be a little bit separated from that. At the same time, this is a pretty fun scenario. I think it's, like I said, I think it's better than the original Loki. I don't think that's too controversial to say, but at the end of the day, I think all these scenario packs were fun, and if you can find one that's out of print, great. I hope one day they can reprint some of these or make them like print and play or something, because I do think that some of these, like Kang, would be very hard to reprint on your own. It's a lot of cards, but I think the experience is so worth it. And so I do hope that there's some kind of way that the legacy of these scenario packs can carry on. But that is my time. I've gone on probably longer than I was expecting, and I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day, and remember, you're doing great. Keep it up.